First of all, we're going to talk about Skull 1. So for this, we want to be flat in the water, and ideally we'd be using a snorkel or a pool buoy so that we can take our legs out of the equation and take our breathing out of the equation and fully focus on what we're doing with our arms and our hands and focus on that feel of the water underneath our hands and forearms. For Skull 1, we want the arms to be almost fully straight. There's a very slight bend in the elbow, and the hands are angled down towards the bottom of the pool in our catch position. So our slight angled with our fingertips just below the surface of the water by a couple of inches, as we can see in this video. We're then going to draw either a figure of 8 or a half moon position with our hands, feeling that water and feeling that we're getting the propulsion from feeling the water and propelling ourselves forward like this. Things we want to avoid is going into breaststroke, which a lot of people would do where they're using that elbow to generate power, but this isn't about that. This is about using the feel of the water under your hands and using that movement from the shoulder and the rotation in the forearm to generate that power going forwards. Next, we're going to talk about Skull 2. So our body is again flat in the water. If we're using a pool buoy, this is again going to take our legs out of the equation when it comes to propulsion. It's also going to help us to stay flat in the water and keep our focus onto our forearms. If we're using a snorkel, this means we don't necessarily have to worry about our breathing. We can also keep ourselves flat in the water and not have to do any rotation in order to breathe. Moving towards the arms, we want to have a nice high elbow position. As you can see, the elbows are really high and close to the shoulder height in terms of where they are in the water. Our hands are almost pointed directly down. And I always describe this as almost like hanging over the bar, like when you were a child. You're going to feel the weight of the water with your forearms and with your hands. And this weight of the water is what's important for propelling yourself forward. Again, we're going to use either that figure of 8 movement or that half moon movement to propel ourselves, keeping the weight of the water behind our hand and forearm, using that to generate power going forwards. Next, we're going to be talking about Skull 3. Skull 3 is about focusing on the back end of our stroke. So we're going to be in the same position, flat in the water as we were for the first 2 drills. We can be using a pull buoy again to help with our legs and to make sure we're not using our legs to propel ourselves forward with the stroke. We're then going to be using our arms from the shoulder to the hip position and working on the rear end of our pull. So as we come forward, hands are going to be level with the shoulders, still keeping a high elbow, still keeping the hands towards the bottom of the pool. And we're going to be catching that water with our hand, with our forearm, keeping pressure through as we pull the water towards our hips. We want to be feeling that pressure under the forearm, and we want to be keeping that pressure all the way up to the point where we're level with the hip to ensure that we're using the full extent of our stroke when we go back to normal freestyle. Finally, we're going to talk about doggy paddle or Skull 4. So this is a combination of the other 3 movements that we've done before, and the body position is going to be the same as it was for the last 3 movements. We're then going to jab our hand forward into that first catch position, into that Skull 1 position, and move our hand all the way through the water underneath the surface towards our hip. So we're getting good power as we come through the movement. We need to feel the weight of the water underneath our hand and forearm and move it all the way down towards our hip before we bring our arm back towards the front. Notice how my hand does not leave the water. keeping it underneath the surface throughout.